and I'll update that for on top. Okay, if it didn't have defer on top, we would run into some problems. And we also have this function already built for us, get random int. We've seen it before, we've used it before. Okay. The first thing that we want to do when we arrive at this page is we are going to want to fill in the numbers on the page in these TDs, right? So we want all these TDs. We want to select all these TDs so we can access each one of them and insert content, right? We want to insert a number. So if I were to write this down, I would say we want to select all the TDs on the page and go through each of those TDs and insert a random number. Now it's not completely random, right? This part here, the end of line 8 and the beginning of line 9, that has that's a lot. That's a really packed sentence. We need to unpack that too, right? Because what does it mean to insert a random number? Well, that means the number must be between two thresholds. So a threshold is like a delimiter. So like a lower limit, so two limits, right? A lower and an upper. In addition to that, the number being between those, and that number is based on the column that we are placing the number in, right? So the B column gets a different set of random numbers than the I column, and then the N column, and the G column, and the O column, right? So that's those random numbers are between two limits, a lower and an upper limit, and that is determined by the column that the number is found in. In addition to that, no number can be used more than one time. Okay, and all of this has to happen on page load. So as soon as we load the page, we just have, and we're really good at this. We've done this a couple times already, right? Where we just have JavaScript apply immediately on page load. And then finally, after that, we have a reset button that we are going to want to deal with. And we have a click to dab type of thing. So we're going to have to, we're going to deal with that after. Okay, we're going to do this one first. We'll expand on these a little bit later. So we broke it down. We want to go through, we want to select all the TDs on the page. Okay, so let's deal with that first. Let's select all the TDs on the page. And to select all the TDs on the page, we can just look here and we see in the HTML, all the TDs, we pretty much want to select all the TDs except for free space, right? Free space is the only one we don't want to select. This is the only one we don't want to insert a number to. We can select it. We just have to be careful and know that when we are selecting, and we do select it, that we don't want to insert a number into there, okay? Or you can come up with a clever way of excluding that from your selector, okay? Both of those are options. For example, maybe you wanted to select all the columns, right? Select everything from the B column, then select everything that has the class I column, N column, G column, and O column. Then you wouldn't get this one. So that might be a clever way of doing it too. Okay. There's definitely probably 20 different approaches that were taken for this, because I only saw a couple people's, but the few that I did see, they were very different and very different than mine. So I'm going to do it in a way that I think is fairly reasonable for a student to do. Okay, it's not going to be super advanced. So we're going to start by selecting, I'm going to select all the TDs, const, all cells equals document dot query selector all. Actually, doesn't really matter. Get elements by tag name. Query selector all, get elements by tag name, virtually the same. One's a live collection, one's not. Doesn't matter. Okay, so I have a collection of cells here, all the cells. So this is a collection of TD elements. Okay, one of the things I'm going to stress again is that this is not an element. This is a collection of elements. The things that we're used to doing on elements, like setting text content, cannot be done on a collection of elements. It must only be done on a singular element, which means we need to loop through this collection and apply that concept to each element in that collection. Okay. I'm just going to take this and bring it over to my browser to make sure that I'm getting what I think I'm getting. So I'm going to paste that in. And it looks like I get an HTML collection of 25 items. That's exactly what I want. 25 squares, 25 squares, 25 items, 25 elements, perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to loop through these. Okay, so I'm going to say for every let cell, let's say cell, for every cell of all cells. So now I end up with a cell inside this loop, and a cell is an element. So if I wanted to, I can say cell equals cell.textContent equals 0. And we'll save that, we'll refresh this page and watch what happens. Okay. We get zeros in every cell. Okay. So we are already able to get all the TDs, go through each of those TDs, right? Go through each of those TDs and insert a random number. Now, my random number is 0, and I just made that up, so it's random, right? But I think we want something a little bit more structured than that. And that structure is based on those limits. So the B limit is, what is it, 1 to 15, right? The I limit is 16 to 30, etc. Okay, all the way up. So there's a couple of different ways you can handle that. The way I handled that is I looked at this, and this is exactly what I did. I looked at these two lines when I started writing them out in pseudocode. And I'm like, whoa, what does this look like? If I put a little colon here, a comma, and a colon here and a comma, this could be like an object. This is my limits object, my JavaScript limit objects, where the key is the letter and the value is an array of 2 elements that has the bottom threshold or the top threshold. Or you could even do something like this. Lower limit, 1, upper, actually this is pretty nice too, 50. and you just copy the whole thing. So each, and we'll close that up. So it's an object of objects. G, O. So the B, the I's, the N's, the G's, the O's. And the lowers, actually, ooh, even better. If I called them these, I can just take the class name right from these TDs, and I can use it to select pieces right from my object. That'd be pretty nice. Okay, so we have our lower limit and our upper limit. 30, 31, 45, 46, 60, 61, 75. Okay, so I have my limits. You might have had this in 5 different variables. You might have had this in an array of arrays. You might have had this in an object. I'm hoping that you put it in some sort of variable and not just magic numbers that we talked about. Okay, so I've talked about the unfortunate use of magic numbers, where we're just putting in numbers into our code that don't have any meaning to someone who comes along and reads it after. Okay, so I'm hoping that in some way, shape, or form, you added it to a variable, be that, const, upper B limit equals 1, const, lower B limit equals 1, upper B limit equals 15, right? If you did 8 or 10 variables like that, I hope you did something like that. Okay, just to at least have these. So if all of a sudden Bingo changes, one, it's really easy just to change all your code. You just change those variables or that one object or that array of arrays. Or if someone comes along and reads your code, they at least get a sense of what's going on. Okay. Using these limits, I can do this part. Insert a random number. Okay. And between a lower and upper limit. Okay, so not just any random number that I want, between a lower and upper limit. So what I'm going to do is I need to know what sort of cell this is, right? If I'm looping through all the cells and I need to input a specific number between X and Y in that cell, right? If I'm dealing with a G cell, I need to know that I can only insert a number between 46 and 60 into that G cell, right? And so I need to ask what is the class of the cell that I'm dealing with, so I know which threshold to get. So I essentially need to say, if cell.class, you could say class name equals the B column, for example. This is just an example of one way of going about this. Then, if the cell.class name is B column, right, because I have some that are B column, then I want to say cell.textContent equals getRandomInt, and get the lower and upper limits. Pass in the lower limit to min and the upper limit to max into getRandomInt, which will generate an int. So to access this object, it's limits dot b dot lower and limits dot b dot upper to get limits dot b dot lower, limits dot b dot upper. And this will create some random numbers for me in the B column. There we go. Got a couple problems, 8 and 8, right? We're not checking for duplicates. That's something we're going to want to deal with. Okay, but one piece at a time. So we check the class name, we get the B column. We might instead ask, instead of class name, we might ask the class list, does it contain B column? And the reason why we might do that instead is because if we have another class on here, like any other random class, this class name is no longer B column. It is now test B column. And so the previous example I showed you would not work. Whereas this one will work because as long as it has a class called B column, this will continue to work. So if I save this and refresh, that still works. I'm going to pause. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay. We're still like, why don't we just get random int 1 to 15? Again, that's okay. So why don't we just do this? That's a magic number. These numbers don't mean anything, right? There's a couple reasons why. I'll show you a reason right away, other than the fact that they're magic numbers, right? At least the way I'm doing it is those numbers have meaning in my code. If we just use random int 1 to 15, those have no meaning. Okay. And I get it. It seems really easy. You saved yourself all that code, right? But it's not about the amount of code that you're not putting on the page. Code tells a story, right? And sometimes you read a book, and that book, it needs a certain amount of words to express everything. And sometimes those books are too short. They don't have everything, right? And sometimes they're too long, and sometimes they're perfect. And so what we're looking for is that perfect amount. We don't want to put too much, but we don't want to put too little either. Okay, so having these extra 7 lines of code, they help with the story that we're trying to tell. Okay. In addition, I'm going to show you something super cool right away that will blow your mind for some people. That will also make this actually way shorter. Okay. So here we are. We would need to do this now. This big else if statement for each class list. Okay. If it contains the I column. And we're doing the same thing, but we're not doing B's, we're doing I's. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing. Paste IN column.
John,
Yes.
else if parentheses cell is missing a C.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. So this is not bad. Okay. but it's not great. Okay, this will totally work, but it's not great. I'm gonna finish writing this, and then I'm gonna comment it out, and I'm gonna show you another way to do this. NGO NGO. Okay. The last one is an else if, because if it was just an else, I would end up getting the free space, right? I don't want that free space. I need to check everything, the I's, the B's, the I's, the N's, the G's, the O's, because I do have a cell that has a class called free space. So if I don't check it, free space will get colored. You can see that here. Okay. So if I do check it, free space won't get colored. Cool. Random numbers, everything works. Okay. I am going to now copy this, actually copy this and comment this out, because that's not a very good approach. Okay, so I'll leave that in here. You can take a look. This might be your approach. Obviously, we're missing a very important piece here, and that is we're not checking for duplicates. Okay, no problem. This is my preferred approach for something like this. I like to leverage these types of things, these keys, okay? And instead, what I would probably do is I would say, okay, so I have each cell, and I have these limits here. How can I, maybe if I change this to this, maybe I can then look at the cell and ask if it contains a certain name. Okay, so I might be able to say that if get the class list, sorry, get the class of my cell and put it inside this object and see if I get something back from it. So for example, I could say, does limits cell dot class name equal undefined? Now, if the cell had a class name called B column, the answer to this would be false. It's not undefined. In fact, it's very defined. And then I can go and get a random int from that cell. We'll see how, I'll show you how this one works. Again, this is just square brackets. And we can comment this out. Lower of undefined cell dot class name. Where's that? 21. Cell.text content. Cell.class name dot lower. Yeah. Cell.class name dot upper. Oh, what's this? That's a problem, but that's something we could deal with. And so when I run into problems like this, I console log things. I'm thought that this should be an object, limit cell.class name. So let's see if it, sorry, not equals undefined. Oh. Okay, so if as long as there's something in it. So as long as this doesn't equal undefined, do this. My apologies. and we get this. Which means if I were to change all of these to match the classes in here, and this is just advanced. Okay, I'll go back to the other one after. Now, this is all the code I need. Okay, because I'm tying these together. Two great reasons. This is still very, it still tells that same story, right? All the information's there. It's still indicating the lower limits, where the limits are for which column. But at the same time, it's leveraging a connection between the key in the object and the class name. So we're forging that connection. Okay, so that's for those of you who are looking for maybe a more thoughtful, more advanced method. There's a couple of different approaches like this that you can take. This is just one. Okay, and this will do all of them. What if, yeah, right. So what if class name is b.column dab? So there's another way you can do it, and that's go back to the class names I had, and you can then use the limits. You can use this object to ask if the class name contains a class name based on one of the objects. So then in that case, you'd have to do some looping. So you'd either have to loop over the class names, which you can do, right? You either have to loop over the class names, which you can do, cell.class list dot, and then this is an array, so you can loop over these for let class name of class list, okay, and then you can ask it for each class name, and then you can go around, then you get around that. Or you can do a reverse approach. I'd have to show you that after. I'll show you that in my code. I'll also post my original solution, which has that. But this is not the solution I wanted to go ahead with. I want to go with something a little bit more along the lines of something some of you might have done, which is the else if stuff. Okay. Okay. So we have all of our squares being colored with a number, but now we need to track whether or not we used a number already. You can absolutely use a set. Okay, now for those of you who don't know, a set looks like this. Const numbers used numbers equals new set. Okay, and a set, we can add numbers to a set. Use numbers dot add a number. Okay, and then if we try to add a number again, I'll console log the set. Okay, so I added the number 15 twice. Okay, and I'll just console log it, so we'll see that here. It only still shows up once. Okay, and that's the benefit of a set. However, in this case, you don't really need to. All you need is an array. Okay, and I'll show you how I do that with an array. Okay. And this is where my previous approach kind of comes in handy. I don't like the solution I'm giving you today. it's not as good as the one I did the other day. But it's something, okay? We need to add these numbers, these get random ints, before we set the text content, okay? We need to check the value, okay? And that is, we need to check the value to make sure that they're not in this array of used numbers, right? So what's going to happen is we're going to generate the first number. We're going to generate this first number, and we're going to store it inside a variable, okay? So B column, or call it B number. We're going to store it inside a variable. Then before we add it to the text content, we need to check if used numbers dot includes and we used includes the other day, and this checks to see if this number is in the array. B number. If it's not in there, then awesome, we can use it. We set this text content to that number, B number, and we push B number into the array of used numbers. So now, whenever we use a number, we push it onto the array. Now, watch what happens when we have this. There should be an instance. There we go. There is an instance where I end up with an empty square. Why is that?
Of any kind of else statement for what to do when you find the same number, when you find a duplicate.
Right. I don't have an else statement because the number was the same, right? The number was the same, so it didn't run. So I'd have to have an else statement that says, okay, then fine. Then get another number and use that number, right? So let's save that and try it again. Okay. Looks good. But there's a problem with this approach too. What is the problem with this approach? Yeah, if it's the same. So the problem with this approach as well, if you use this approach of if the number already exists, then generate it again and add it, is that because it's random, there is a possibility that it generates the same number 2 times in a row, 3 times in a row, 10 times in a row. Probably not likely, but possible. We could, well, no, we would not likely. The problem with this approach is that if I refresh this enough, you're still going to find a blank space. Don't let me down. And if we're writing a program, oh, actually, this is not working at all. Oh, yeah. This one, it is working. It's working perfectly, actually. You won't find a blank space in this case. You will still find duplicates. I saw them a couple times. I saw duplicate once. Because once it encounters the duplicate, it regenerates a random number. O's are not done yet, right? It's only B's right now. It generates a random number, but then the second time it generates a random number, it doesn't check. So I ended up actually with 14 3 times. Oh, that's pretty crazy. Okay, I ended up with 14 3 times because it checked, does 14 exist? And it said, yep, it does. Okay, generate a new random number and just push that on. And guess what? The next time it generated a random number, it was also 14. It didn't check. What we really want to do here is, instead of an if else, we really want to use a while loop and say, while the use numbers does not, while use numbers includes B number, right? If the so this is essentially saying, if the number is in this array of use numbers, keep generating a new number until that number is no longer in there. So this while loop will keep generating new numbers as long as the number it generates has been used already. Right? So this essentially looks for a number that has never been used. And actually, this is something that I mentioned, but this requires us to get the number first, then check it, and then if it is, then keep doing it. But we always want to get a number. So instead, what we can do is we can do something called a do while loop. And that allows us to move this condition to the end. And this will always run. Always, always, always. And so it generates the number first, then checks the number, and it saves us the need to generate a number at the beginning, as opposed to moving it at the beginning. So while loops check first, do while loops run the code one time at least, and then check at the end. But it's the same thing. It gets stuck in the while loop until we find a number. Once we find a number, then we push it on. So we will get stuck in this loop until we find a number. We could technically almost loop forever, but as Kevin mentioned, statistically unlikely. Okay. Yeah. And this is okay. Okay, the problem I have here is we're going to be seeing a lot of duplicate stuff here. You thought you saw blank space in the B column? No. We're gonna run into a lot of duplicate stuff here. Const declaration. Oh, this can't be const. This has to be a let. There we go. Okay, so that's only working for B's right now. But as soon as I do this, you're going to see me do this again over here. But instead of B number, now it's going to be I number. And it's going to be the I lower and I number and I upper. And you can see how annoying this gets, right? So there's a couple ways we can do this. What I would like to do is, what I like to do when I see a lot of repeating code, and I'm going to have to do again for N and again for G and again for O. And next thing you know, I've got 100 lines of code. And I say, well, you know, it doesn't really matter how long it is. But one of the things that does matter is that we're repeating a lot of the same code, right? And when we're repeating a lot of the same code, we want to try to extract that into possibly a function if we can. Okay. So I do see the ability to extract this into a function. Maybe we could do something, a function like this. Generate solid generate and unique number, and generate unique number. We'll take all this code here. And instead of b number, we'll just say number. We'll need to pass it in a lower and upper limit. And it will simply return number that we generate. So we took all that stuff, all that unique stuff that was in each of these that we're going to have to repeat over and over and over again, and we put it in a function where we just pass in the upper and lower thresholds, and it will use that to generate a random number for us. And we need to all we need to do is keep track of these use numbers. It has access to use numbers because that is out here. Just a little bit of reorganization here. Move my variable declarations to the top, function declarations below that. So we are generating a unique number. I can, if I wanted to, I can also pass in used numbers. I can do that too. And then I can just pass this array in. Okay. And then we end up with this. We need to pass in the upper and lower. B. B. And we'll actually want to put this in a variable here. And we can guarantee that this gives us a unique number. And we're reducing the total amount of work that we need to do every time by quite a bit. So instead of just setting the text content, and again, you're seeing a lot of very similar repeated stuff. You can probably take this out and put that into a function as well. And then you end up with just one line. Okay, again, I'm trying to do this in a way that maybe might resonate a little bit more with this. And G. Oh. And need that. Let's take a look here. If there's any duplicates, I'm just going to move this down so we can see more. Does anyone see any duplicates? No, that's good. Okay, so this might be one of the ways that you, like the approach. So there's two different things going on here. One, generating a unique number, right? So solving how to generate a unique number. That's one. Two, after you figured that out, doing what I just did here, this is called refactoring, where you have a lot of repeated code and you're like, oh man, I'm doing this over and over and over and over again. There must be a better way for me to do this. And as a developer, what we want to do is we want to be able to eat, like I look at this here, and this is very bothersome to me, okay? I want to clean this up so badly. I know that there's a better way to write this. I see this repeated over and over and over and over again. And what's the difference? One letter in each. Can't I just grab the first letter of the class and just insert it instead? Like, could I not do that? Like, there's a lot of different ways that I might be able to improve this. That's called refactoring. And so the first thing I usually do is I come up with a solution, and I come up with my draft and I just write everything out. And then after that, I go back and I say, wow, looks like I'm repeating a lot of stuff. There's got to be a better way, right? And there usually is. And so I would go then into some rewrites. I would try to extract things. What I might do is I might make a copy of my working solution and call it app2.js. And I might make a copy file. That way I have my actual, like my real solution that I know that works. And then I might try different ways using the language, the features of the language to rearrange my code, right? At least I have it, at least I have the problem solved, more or less. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the use numbers push, you put the new numbers in the array. Can that be in the function generate unique number as well?
Yes, but then, oh yeah, totally. Actually, that's a great idea. That's a good idea to put it in here. And actually, I feel like push does something good. Array push JavaScript. I feel like I can not only put that in there. If you refactor much more, no. If I refactor more, I would not make it harder. A good refactor does not usually, this is very, very, very tied to that HTML. If I refactor it more, hopefully I can make it more general and more reusable and not harder to manage, instead easier to manage. The problem is, if I change one thing here, I have to change it probably in 5 places. Ideally, if I refactor it better, I might only have to change it in 1. JavaScript array push. What does it return? Can't remember. Does it return the array? The new length. Okay, that's useless. Yeah, but I could definitely do that here. Use numbers, push number, definitely. And then we don't need that one anymore. And then actually, I don't need to store the number anymore because I can just generate it. Like that. Right? Because I don't need to store it to push it. Before I was storing it, so that way I could do 2 things. Push it and push it and then push it and then put the text content in. No. See, now my refactor is actually better because if I need to change one thing, if I need to change something, I can just do it right here. Right? This is the magic right here. This one little thing, and it works for all of these. Okay, again, still I could still go better. I could still do better than this. I could probably get this down to 2 or 3 lines. Yeah, scope of the code is the same. There's just less redundancies, which means I don't have to change as many things. And it's still just as flexible. In fact, I would argue it's more flexible because now I have, if a new column came in instead of bingo, we now play bingos, and there's an S, and it goes from 75 to 90, right? That's a really easy change. Add one line here, add one line here. And that's it. This just keeps working, right? No changes. So, and this should still just keep working. Okay, so, and like, I'm showing you this not because this is what I expect you to do in assignments. I'm showing you this because I want to teach you what programmers do. Okay, this is something that takes lots of this is a skill that is developed, but this is something that we do often. Is we write drafts of code to solve the problem, and then once we're comfortable enough that we know the solution to the problem, then we can play around with our code to make our code better. Okay, so there's always two challenges, right? One is coming up with the how am I going to do this? And once you figure that out, then you start to realize, oh, well, maybe I don't want to use an array. Maybe I will use a set, but the solution is already there. The solution's already in your head. And so then you can play around with the words, right? Once you know the story you want to tell, then you can rearrange the words to make the story flow better. Okay, but coming up with that story that you want to tell is the most important thing to start with. So coming up with the solution to the problem first is more of a mental practice. And then the code that represents that, well, we have so many different ways of putting it together. So we get so many different options. Okay. All right, so we have all of our cells. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to have to add an event listener. We're actually almost done. Okay, that was the biggest part. We're going to add an event listener to all these to color them. Okay, and as I mentioned a couple times over the past couple days, is ideally we should add an event listener to a parent. Okay, we should delegate this because there's many TDs. Let's not add it to all the TDs. Let's just put it on the body. Not on the body, on the table, or maybe even better, we don't need the head. Maybe just the table body, maybe just T body. Okay. So let's go get T body, const T body equals document dot query selector T body. This will give us one single element. Okay, and we can say T body dot add event listener. Click, and when we click on it, we're going to run this. We're going to run this function. Okay, and this function will say console.log. Hi, just to see if this is working. Click, 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 click. Click up here, nothing. Click out here, nothing. Okay, so as long as we're clicking in here, we're good. But again, the problem is, what if we click in between these things? That's working too. Okay, we are going to want to make sure that we're only clicking on TDs. Okay, so we need to check the event and make sure that the lowest level item that we're clicking on, the event.target, is a TD. Okay, and that is event.target. So we want to say if the event target, no name, TD, then what do we do? Then we need to color it. And again, if we rewind back to what I talked about at the first, in the first 5 minutes of this, how do we color it? We don't need to change the background style because there's already a class dab exactly. So we can say event.target.class list add dab. Okay. And we refresh. Click, 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 click. Now, what happens when I click on free space? It doesn't change because it already has that class. This is a little bit redundant in the sense that this is always happening. I'm always adding the class dab to these things, even when they already have it. But the nice thing about CSS, about class lists, is it doesn't add multiples. So even though I'm not checking to see if it already has that class dab on it, okay, it doesn't add it again and again and again and again and again. So even this would apply, even though this applies to free space, it doesn't really matter in this sense. Okay, and that's okay, as long as you know that in our case right now. Nice. And clicking in the middle, clicking around, this doesn't do anything. Excellent. And finally, the reset, right? We have this button down here that's supposed to reset this whole thing. So we're going to have to grab that button. Okay. Here, this is not a form. Okay, it's important to know when I show you stuff, it's important to know that I show you ideas, right? I show you tools, I show you some patterns, but this is not in a form, and that's fine. So what do we do to buttons that aren't in a form and we want to listen to a click? We just target the button itself and listen for the click on that button. We don't have to worry about a form. Okay, so we're going to go grab this button, block const, button equals document, get element by ID, and I believe it was called reset. If we look at the button, had the ID of reset. Okay, so I'm getting by ID because it has an ID on it. The table body, I didn't get by ID because it doesn't have an ID on it. It doesn't even have a class. So query selector works. Get elements by tag name would work, but then I would get a collection, and there's only one, and I only want one, so query selector is my choice. So in this case, I'm getting the button, and I'm going to add an event listener on the button. Button.add event listener. Click. And on click, what are we going to do? We're going to reset this. Now, so this is saying run the function with the name reset. I don't have a function called reset right now. So I'm going to make one. Reset. I'll put it up at the top of the other functions because I'm going to, the reason why I'm not doing an anonymous inline function here is because reset, and here I'll show you. What do I do on reset? Well, I do all this stuff, this part, this giant for loop. And so I can copy paste that in and do it again, but that again is repeated. Like I don't want to repeat that stuff. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this in a function. Function reset. I'm going to put this in a function and paste. And then I'm just going to call that function. Reset. Okay. Now let's come back over here and refresh this page. And oh yeah, I moved it to a function, so it doesn't work anymore because functions don't automatically run when I load a page. So I should probably run that function when the page loads. Right? You can just run a function. Remember, we used to do that before we were doing event listeners and stuff. And so we have our reset page, refresh, new numbers every time, clicky, clicky, clicking, works good, reset. Oh, the numbers reset, but these didn't go away. That's annoying. I wish there was something I can do to fix that. And of course there is, right? I can simply remove the dab. On reset, I can simply perform this same task. Event cell dot class list remove dab. So if there is a dab on any of these, it should be removed. Now I kind of want to do that for all of them. But the problem is if I do it for all of them, I get that free space in there again. And this is broken. See, and it ended up removing it on the free space. So I don't necessarily want to do that. I would write that better, but I won't bother for today. Okay, I would refactor this because you'll see I'm doing this over and over again. I'd probably just write an if statement first to check to see if I am on the free space, or I'd remove the free space completely. And there we go. Okay, so a lot of repetition, but again, at this stage in the game, for you, I'm okay with that. If you handed this in to me and it was 150 lines of code of repeated stuff, I would probably be fairly okay with that. I'd provide you feedback because I want you to get feedback and think about these things, but I probably wouldn't take off many marks, if at all, any. Okay, I'm looking for solutions to problems right now at this stage. Solutions to problems, not elegant solutions. Okay, solutions to problems using the tools that we've covered, not super elegant solutions. What if I just targeted all the TDs on click and set background color to white? Well, because that doesn't change anything, right? That's still the exact same thing because I still have to stop. I have to look at free space and say, don't change that to white. And so it's the exact same thing. The class name in CSS is TD dab. How come it works with just add dab? No, the class name in CSS is not td.dab. The class name is dab. The element is TD. Okay. You might have to go back to your CSS and review. Could I deal with the reset button with on-click? Sure, right? The reset button with on-click would look like this. .dab is the class, TD is the parent. No, dab is the class, TD is the element. So this would be the on-click. Dab is the class, TD is the element, right? Class, element. So td.dab, dab is the class. TD is the element. This is not the class. Can you use backticks on object keys? I think so. No. Interesting. You could do backticks on object keys inside parentheses, though. you wanted to. And that should still give you the same object. So I thought that was a fun little one, because some of the problems that you're dealing with stuff where there's only slight changes in your logic, right? You have to, you find that you're going to repeat the same logic over and over again, but you only have to solve it for one, right? You only had to really figure out this one piece and this one piece and then this one piece, right? There's very small pieces that you need to figure out. These types of problems are really great for breaking down. You can break down problems very well. So I really like this one. I didn't think it was too difficult. I would say this is very much along the same vein of what we might see on Monday in our assignment in class. Okay, now I'm not saying it's identical in any way, but I'm saying the problem scope is approximately this size, maybe a little bit smaller. Okay. And there is going to, maybe smaller, probably smaller, but the challenges are going to be about the same. Okay. Any other questions? I can reload the page. Yeah, if your code is repetitive in the assignment, sure. Now, of course, it's going to be, there are limitations to that, right? Like if you are literally repeating the same thing over and over and over again, when you could have just very, very obviously put it in a function, I would say I'll probably take off a couple points. But if it's something that's a little bit more complex, like this one, where you may not have seen that, then no. Like it's not yes and no. It's not black and white, right? And so I try to operate in a manner of like, what do I expect the students should be able to do at this point? Okay, I want you to do your best using the tools that you have, and I will evaluate you accordingly. And I need your assignment to speak to. I need you to let your assignment speak to me. No, I think I'm just going to post this solution. We'll see. I actually, yeah, maybe I will. I've got lots of time, so I just need to adapt it to the few changes that I made on here. But I'll post the other solution that I have to. I can post a really, really short one if you want, but I probably need to charge my Mac. Why? Oh, yeah. It's doing pretty good. It's doing pretty good. It's because I'm doing I've got a lot of stuff running right now. But it's fine. Okay, so we're not going to go on break. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to look right now at the next thing, because I don't have anything to talk about today. So we're going to look at what I'm going to give you for the weekend and for the rest of the afternoon. And so this one is not something that I will be covering. I will not be covering the solution to this. Okay, this is for practice. This is purely for practice. So if you want to do this weekend, I highly encourage it. If you don't, well, hey, that's your choice. If you want to review your stuff, if you want to review these assignments, if you want to review your reading, that's up to you too. But I think this one is fun. There's a bazillion solutions already online for this, okay? So if you want to go and watch a YouTube video on how to do this, go ahead. But again, I highly recommend that you try your best to build it first. If you're going to watch a solution on how to build it, watch it on Sunday night. So, and I'll post the solution shortly, okay? We are going to LTLMS. I want you to build a tic-tac-toe game. Yeah, I thought it was a good exercise too. Thanks, Willie. This tab is broken. Tic-tac-toe. So I give you nothing in this case. So you get to build everything from scratch. You get to decide, and it should be pretty easy to make a 3x3 grid, either as a table or Flexbox or whatever you want in HTML and CSS. Okay. I want you to build a working tic-tac-toe game, and you should have 2 players. And it doesn't actually have 2 players. You essentially click on one square, and I might have a copy here, actually. Let's see if I have a copy. What? Since when does it open? Okay. No, I don't have a working copy of this. Yeah, it says I do. That's interesting. So you're going to build a working copy of a tic-tac-toe game, which essentially is just a grid, 3x3 grid. I'm sure you've all played tic-tac-toe. When you click on one square in the game, this one's broken. When you click on one square in the game, it will print out an X. I think X always goes first. Player 1 should always go first, okay? Then you can just click on the second square and it'll print out an O. Then you click on another square, prints out an X. You click on another square, prints out an O. Okay, so it's constantly alternating between player 1 and player 2. You don't actually have to do anything. You have to write the code that alternates between the two, okay? So there's a little bit of logic behind that. You need to obviously create your little board, which is a little bit of HTML and CSS fun. I recommend using Font Awesome for your X's and O's. But if you want to start, you can just use 1s and 0s, or literally the X and the O, just to kind of get something out to try. You're going to obviously have some event listeners. So a couple little things. Player 1 should always go first. So you can assign player 1 to either X's or O's. So X should always go first, or O should always go first. Once a symbol has been placed in a box, you shouldn't be able to place another symbol in that box. And this is I don't know what Gomoku is. Five in a row. No, oh, goodness, no. It's X's and O's. Just this. Okay. And where was I? This is an interesting thing, determining when someone wins. Okay, that is definitely I would say more advanced. I give this every year. I give this to students every year, and they have as much practice as you have. and they're able to, most students are able to do this. So what does it mean to win the game? How do we determine whether someone has won the game? Okay, and then provide a way to restart the game. Again, it doesn't have to be X's and O's. It can be any two symbols of your choice. Happy faces and sad faces. I don't know, hats and pikes, cats and dogs, whatever you want. Okay. I would say consider using Font Awesome for graphics. Okay. So you get obviously the rest of the day. I encourage you to work as a group or as partners. Try and doing that online, however you can. Okay, that's a very common thing that we do. This type of remote work is actually pretty common. So it's useful it might help too, to help that feeling of isolation, maybe help you not feel so isolated from each other. And if you're missing some of your classmates, this would be a great opportunity for you to connect with them and do something together. Right? Again, I'm not evaluating this. I'm not even going over this on Monday. This is just for practice, right? Yeah, so again, it's up to you. If you want to go review your stuff, fine. If you want to keep practicing on something that's reasonably attainable, work on this. If you just want to sleep all weekend, that's fine too. You do whatever you do. You're in charge of your education. So. Okay, and this is not getting a board built, placing and determining whether or not you should place an X or an O, and determining whether or not you should place it in a square that already has something placed. That's a lot of stuff already, and that is exactly what we've been doing for the past 2 days, right? Like selecting squares, determining whether or not we want to color it, selecting a square, determining changing the color on the pixel art maker, right? The pixel art maker and the bingo game yesterday were very, very similar. And this is super similar. The only additional piece here is the winning condition. So if you're looking for some more practice to build on that doesn't require crazy new additional stuff, this is it. Just save that win condition to the end. Any other questions? Do we need to write HTML and CSS Monday's assignment? No. No, I don't have that time. We don't have that sort of time. You can throw HTML and CSS together for this in like 5 minutes, right? Just use a table with 3 rows and 3 columns. It doesn't even have to look good, right? If you just want to test something out. Are there any similarities? Sure, there's lots of similarities. Just like there's similarities from today's assignment or today's exercise and yesterday's exercise, right? There's always a lot of similarities, but like you're not going to get to, here's the thing, you're not going to get to Monday's assignment and be like, oh, I just need to go over here and copy and paste the code from there. It would never, ever be like that. I would never ask that, okay? It's going to be a new, unique problem. But it's going to be dealing with the DOM, and it's going to be you can do it with all the code, all the stuff that you already know. It's not scary. It's not scary. I don't think it's scary. I think you'll be fine. Just like I think everyone was fine with the HTML and CSS. I feel like it's some people will be, I think some people will be able to do it in an hour. Some people will take 5 hours. And some people will not finish. That you show us. No. That's the final project. The final project you get 2 days to do, including like you could take it home at night. Yeah. That will come at the end of next week, the last 2 days, Thursday, Friday. So Monday Monday is the assignment. Tuesday, Wednesday will be practice days, where I have a practice project for you. And then Thursday, Friday will be your final project. Yeah, so we're going to keep building. We're still all next week, every day, almost 100% of the day is going to be programming. It's going to be more like this, where I finish at around 10:15. And then I'm just online. If you have questions during the weekend, you can message me. I make no guarantees that I will be online. I don't know. I don't have a good time. No. Here's the thing. Message me. If you have questions, message me. If I'm available and I have time, I will answer them. If I'm not, I won't. There is not a good time or a bad time. Okay, so just message me. If I don't want to talk to you, I will just ignore you. Okay. So don't worry about bothering me. If I'm putting myself out there, I'm prepared to be bothered. Okay. So don't worry about that. Having said that though, don't be upset if I don't get back to you at all. Because I have had students where they're like, I messaged you and you didn't get back to me and that's why I did poorly. Like this is something I do for you guys out of the goodness of my heart, not because I'm required to. But I jumped on last night just for like 10 minutes because I was curious to see how things were going. And I got questions right away and I have no problem answering that. I'm happy, like it's kind of nice. I like being in touch with you guys. So you're welcome. Let's go take a break, grab some more coffee before we sit down for a nice afternoon and evening of programming. Because like, what else do you have to do, right? You don't have anywhere to go. I know you don't have anywhere to go because you shouldn't be going anywhere. So take this opportunity and, they're already telling people that they should be spending this time that they have at home on education. So, that's, I think like a lot of these online learning things are giving away their lessons for free. Like I think like LinkedIn Learning and stuff like that, and probably Udemy probably has a giant sale right now on free learning, but I give you lots of free learning, or not free. I give you lots of stuff to spend time on. No, I have not, but I will post the solution right away. Okay, all right. So there's a lot of stuff. How do we can initiate singing in the balcony like they do in Italy. We can, it'd be tough in Winnipeg. We are not close by. But we could do it in the Discord chat for sure. All right, I'm gonna go grab some more coffee. I'll be back online in about 15 minutes. I'll jump on Discord then. At that point, I will post the solutions for bingo. I will see you shortly. See ya.